Chapter 18 begins with a survey of French problems on the eve of revolution. It then describes the Revolution of 1789 and the reconstruction of French government as a constitutional monarchy. Then we move into the Second Revolution that began in 1792, then the foreign wars that France started in that year, and finally the infamous Reign of Terror and its aftermath. 18th century France was a rich nation, but the government was deeply in debt. The monarchy was unable to come to terms with resurgent aristocracy, and those aristocratic parliaments won the battle for public opinion by presenting themselves as protectors of French liberty. When the king tried to assess new taxes, the parliaments declared the taxes illegal, and this constant friction between King Louis XIV and the aristocracy concerning fiscal and political reform resulted in the convocation of the Estates General in 1787 by the Assembly of Notables. The Estates General had not convened since 1614. In 1788, Louis XIV was forced to accept the convocation, but this aristocratic triumph unleashed social and political forces that neither nobles nor king could control. The Estates General was composed of three groups: the first estate of the clergy, the second estate of the nobility, and the third estate, which represented everyone else, or just your common man. After a political standoff among the estates in 1789, the Third Estate, those common men, invited the others to join a new legislative body, the National Constituent Assembly. In August of 1789, this assembly tried to halt the spreading disorder in Paris. And this is a depiction of the storming the Bastille. And all this disorder going on in Paris, the assembly wanted to renounce the feudal dues, rights, and ties, and declaring that all Frenchmen were now subject to the same laws. On August 27th, the Assembly adopted the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, and Louis XIV, after first hesitating, sanctioned the measures. This is a picture of Louis XIV. After a period of reorganization, the Constitution of 1791 established a constitutional monarchy. In order to deal with the continuing financial crisis caused by the royal debt, the Assembly decided to confiscate and sell the property of the Catholic Church in France. This decision proved to be a serious blunder, as it created formidable opposition within the French Church. During the short life of the Legislative Assembly from 1791 to 1792, domestic political factions competed for power. In 1792, the Assembly was compelled by a hostile crowd to write a democratic constitution. That body, called the Convention, declared France a republic. The Second Revolution, as it was called, was quite radical. In January 1793, Louis XIV was beheaded. This is a depiction of his execution. By April 1793, France was at war with Austria, Prussia, Great Britain, and a few others. The Convention established the Committees of General Security and Public Safety. The Committee of General Security was under the leadership of a few men, most notably Robespierre. Eventually, all these men enjoyed almost a dictatorial power. The major problem was to wage war and at the same time secure public support. And in August, there was an issue that conscripted males into the army and directed economic production for military purposes. In November, the convention outlawed the worship of God and tried to start a cult of reason, which alienated many Christians. In autumn of 1793, the convention eliminated opposition through a reign of terror, which saw the execution of more than 25,000 people. A tempering of the revolution, called the Thermidorian reaction, began in July of 1794. There was a general amnesty for political prisoners, and the convention issued a new constitution led by a 5-person directory. In the winter of 1794 through 1795, there were serious food shortages and riots. In March of 1795, the convention concluded peace with Prussia and Spain. The war with Austria and Great Britain continued, however, and the new and unstable directory increasingly depended upon the power of the army to govern the country. A society and political structure based on rank and birth had given way to a new one based on civic equality and social status. Representation had been established as a principle of practical politics, but domestic tranquility had not yet been assured. In the coming years, France would continue to influence Western civilization under the leadership of a man named Napoleon Bonaparte.